Guys, I'm making this video because we are currently living in a reality that I just don't enjoy, okay? We are living in a reality where to the majority of the combat sports world, Mike Perry is that guy that lost to Jake Paul. And that annoys me because Mike Perry is not the guy that lost to Jake Paul. Mike Perry is the guy that got cut from the UFC and made an entire sport mainstream on the back of his bare knuckles and violence alone. This is Platinum Mike Perry right here on the screen, and I'm going to go through some things with you in today's video because I'm hearing things like Conor McGregor saying he's fired from BKFC, and I know that's probably not that serious, but still, the disrespect on Mike Perry stops today. You had your fun. You made fun of him Saturday night. You made fun of him on Sunday. It ends today. And I'm going to go through some things about Mike Perry for you guys because this guy made BKFC mainstream alone. Purely through violence. Okay? So let's go through some things. Mike Perry. This is who Mike Perry is. Give me a second while I reveal to you who Mike Perry is. Okay? This is the guy we're talking about right here that I just revealed for you guys. One very important thing to note about the start of Mike Perry's career. We're going through this, okay? You see nowadays people take 6, 7 years to make it to the UFC. They'll go 14-0, 15-0, 13-0. Sometimes a Bo Nickel comes along now and again, I get it. But Mike Perry, this needs to be mentioned, a year and a half after he went pro, was in the UFC. 7-0 in a year and a half, all knockouts, vicious, as you can see on the screen right now, leaving people out cold. Mike Perry makes it to the UFC in a year and a half. Is that, and he had some amateur fights, I get it, but after turning pro, it took him a year and a half to get to the UFC. Is that maybe one of the reasons why he eventually got figured out in the UFC and didn't have the career that we all wanted him to? Probably. Okay? Because that's not a lot of time to learn things. Not everyone gets Khabib's career of as long as he wants outside the UFC against 14 fighters that are paid to lose to him. Mike Perry knocked out Preston Parsons, who's a current decently good UFC welterweight, as he was coming up in the regional scene. Not everyone gets 14 free fights like Khabib for as long as they want while they develop their skills and then get to the UFC and act like they're some kind of goat. Okay? Some people really make it out of the trenches. Year and a half, 7 fights, 7 KOs, knocks them all out, gets in the UFC. And he starts his career. And the career begins with a Dong Hyun Ma fight. I think that's his name, I hope it is. And he leaves him face first in the canvas, right in front of Mike Tyson, who was cage side at that moment. He also started a thought you had a friend boy moment when this happened. I'm including all of the accomplishments of Mike Perry here, guys. This is when the famous, you thought you had a friend, boy. That's when that started, okay? And that goes viral. In his debut, the man has the cult of personality, what can I say? He then fights Danny Roberts. Second fight in the UFC. First of all, nasty, vicious KO over Dong Hyun Ma. Shouts out Mike Tyson in his post-fight speech, who then congratulates him as well on camera. Danny Roberts, his next fight. Fight of the year contender. 2 fights, 2 statements, leaves Danny Roberts out cold. Welcome to the club. Mike Perry was ahead of his time. I'll tell you that much, dude. He was knocking out Danny Roberts before it was cool. Okay? Sorry, Danny Roberts, if you happen to be watching this. Either way, though, fight of the year contender, and him and Roberts actually put on a scrap. Go back and watch it if you haven't. 2 fights in, 2 wins. He loses to some lame nerd called Alan Joban. We know you're going down on Karen Bryant to get your opportunities, okay? I'm sick of him. So he loses to some nerd. I'm joking. I take that back. I shouldn't make accusations like that. Either way. He loses to Alan Joban, some random guy. Then he kills Jake Ellenberger. Live on television. He didn't kill him. Jake Ellenberger's still with us. For now. You know what I mean? God, it would be bad timing if something happened while I'm uploading this. Either way. He didn't kill him. But he left him out with a KO of the year contender. 4 fights in the UFC. 4 scraps. 4 doses of violence. 3 knockouts. All of them are nasty. Stuff like that don't just come around. Normally one of the fighters has a boring snooze fest by now. Okay? We know him all too well. Mike Perry then kills Dominic Reyes' little brother. Unfair matchup. He was supposed to fight Thiago Alves at the time, which back then would have been a reasonably decent matchup for him. He ends up having to defeat Alex Reyes, the poor brother of Dominic Reyes, who's literally just sent in there for a lamb to slaughter. One of the biggest examples of a lamb to slaughter that we have seen in combat history. He goes out there, he annihilates Alex Reyes. Poor him. And this is where the sadness begins. But there's going to be a horizon soon where he resurges like a phoenix, okay? But this is where the sadness begins. He gets fraud checked by Ponzinibbio. And he does. And it's tough. Ponzinibbio's a beast back then. People forget, man. Why is my camera still this small? People forget, man. Ponzinibbio was a beast at one point. He was a surging contender until he was hit with a slew of injuries and then even had an infection in his leg that meant that maybe he wouldn't even be able to fight again. At one point, Ponzinibbio was the fucking man, okay? He was the rising contender who's a dark horse for the title. That's who Ponzinibbio was. And Perry put up a scrap with him, but lost. Then he lost to Max Griffin. And again, this is where it gets bad, okay? And this is where some of you may say Perry was mid, but they were still scraps, okay? And maybe if this guy wanted to play things a little safe and didn't want to put on a show, maybe he could have had some easier wins, okay? But no. He puts on a scrap against Paul Felder and beats him. Then we see him lose to Cerrone. And this is where it starts to get a bit sad, because after this, it truly was over for him in the UFC. Loses to Cerrone. That's a layup. We beat those guys. All good, though. Not a layup back then, to be fair. Cerrone still kind of had it. Oliveira fight, not that impressive. He beat Luque. I swear to God, he got robbed. Luque was my favorite fighter at this time and is still one of my favorite fighters, even though now it's not looking too good for his own career. I swear to God, he got robbed by Luque. And this was a time where Luque was a surging contender who still had his chin. Okay? And Mike Perry beat him. I swear he did. He won the first 2 rounds against Luque and they robbed him. And they robbed him on top of him getting his nose completely shattered by Vicente Luque. Unfair. They're always trying to keep a black brother down. Okay? And this is very clear of it. Mike Perry shatters his fucking nose. He comes back and Jeff Neal kills him. Now this is where it's sad. The Mickey Gall fight, it was a win, but it wasn't a win. Because Mickey Gall wasn't destroyed. Therefore, you can't be good. The Tim Means, the D-Rod, and then like a phoenix. When life gave him this set of cards, you are to be beaten by Jeff Neal on pay-per-view. Here's Mickey Gall, look shit against him, and then lose 2 more times. When you see a UFC fighter in this position, you write off their whole life. We're never going to hear from Mike Perry again. And this was at a time, I'm starting to sound like Molly Whoppery, and this was at a time when Mike Perry was knocking out old men in bars just for looking at him funny. And this was at a time when Tim Means was in the top fucking 25. Either way, Mike Perry, it wasn't looking too good for him, okay? We had relationship trouble. We had a kid that was there. Big factor. He just had a child. Or he's looking to have a child around this time. Things ain't looking too good for Mike Perry. He gets cut from the UFC. And that's normally the end. That's normally the nail in the coffin. You find out about them 20 years later and their house is burnt down and they're slurring when they're talking. That's what normally happens. No offense, Steph. Oh, no, I shouldn't have. But I didn't even think he died. Either way. Mike Perry. He resurges like a phoenix. And he gets put against a fighter that he should have lost to. Triad Combat was the name of this promotion. No one even remembers this fight against Michael Seal, a 28-3 pro boxer. Now, he beat some schmucks. He did. He also was in there with some pretty good guys and gave him some good work as well. We went 7 rounds with a guy who knocked out Kovalev before Canelo did it. A year before Canelo did it. The guy then lost a rematch to Kovalev, and, you know, Kovalev proved he was the better fighter overall. But still, he's been in there with some elite level fighters, and he's a big dude. And he's capable. He went 7 rounds with a guy. You're not good if you make it. You're not bad if you make it 7 rounds with a guy who can ever knock out Kovalev ever. Okay? 28-3. Older dude at the time. I think he was like 35, 36. They were looking to snatch Mike Perry's name, the small name value he had left, from the UFC and just chuck him in there and say, fuck it, let's use Mike Perry's name value in this one-off, silly, triangle-shaped ringed event, and let's see what happens. Mike Perry beats this guy in a boxing-only rules triangle ring. For all you boxers out. All you fucking boxing fans, huh? 28-3. Went 7 rounds with a guy who knocked out Kovalev before Canelo did it. Perry says, nah, dude, I'm winning. Arguably a robbery. We move on. All good. I thought he won it, but he did get dropped at the end of the fight, and that did not look good because they didn't give him a 10-8 round. But I don't care. I think they did give him a 10-8. Either way, he fucking won. Then he takes on Julian Lane in BKFC, and this is where it begins. This is where the resurgence of Mike Perry begins. He's beaten Michael Seal. Everyone was like, oh, at least Perry got a payday and didn't lose. That's good. And then he finds BKFC. Mike Perry one day in the gym. I don't know if this is the truth, but it is. And I'm saying it's the truth. Mike Perry was on the heavy bag one day. And he was punching so hard, his gloves fell off. Don't know how it happened. No, you know what? He was punching so fast and hard on the heavy bag, he eroded his gloves away. And via erosion, they revealed his bare knuckles through the gloves. All he had tucked up was the thumb bit and the bit around the wrist where you strap it on. His bare knuckles were revealed through his own thunderous punches on the heavy bag, which he hit for about 7 hours allegedly that day. This is the story that goes round. This was also around the time that he nearly killed himself in the gym by hanging himself by an exercise band, and Jacare Souza saved him. So we're talking a real, he saw the tunnel and he decided, no, I'm going to live. This is a real crossroads moment in his life, okay? If anyone remembers that story. Goes out there, beats Julian Lane in his debut. Shows what he's all about. Spits on the floor some blood. That's an accomplishment. I don't care what anyone says. I don't see Jake Paul doing that. Then he beats MVP. Now, I know if you score this without the elimination round at the end, MVP arguably should have won. But it was a very close and competitive fight. And they did say, we're going to do one final round to decide this. They went to a decision. They had it all over the place. I think there were some draws because Mike Perry dropped MVP in the first round with a punch. Knowing that Ian Gary couldn't fucking land a thing just goes to show that BKFC is a different thing than MMA and boxing. That Artem Lobov beat Paulie Malignaggi as well. It's different. Very, very different environment. Very different styles that work. Mike Perry dropped MVP in the first round of this fight. Arguably should have lost when they did go to the final bell, but they put on one extra round, and I thought Mike Perry won that round, which then eventually gave him the fight. But look what he did to MVP. And this was another one of those fights where you're like, oh God. I don't know if beating Julian Lane means anything, guys. It's feeling like MVP is going to highlight real Mike Perry in BKFC, and this is going to be the end of the road. And this was the first time that Mike Perry was really making some cash for this MVP bout, because they bought MVP out of Bellator for this. I think he was still at Bellator at this time. They hadn't shut down yet, I'm not sure. And there was some uncertainty with MVP's career moving forward. This is before he signed to the UFC. Mike Perry wins. I didn't see any of these marks on his face when he fought Ian Gary. I didn't see a single punch land on MVP's face when he was fighting Ian Gary. And Mike Perry dropped him in a round. This MVP we're talking about here made Kevin Holland look silly. Ian Gary couldn't land a thing, had him shooting for takedowns for his dear life. Okay? And then this happens. He beats Luke Rockhold. And this is something I want to point out because McGregor recently. This is who the fuck Mike Perry is, dude. Everyone's watching. And I need to mention this before we even talk about the McGregor thing. You look up Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, 1 million subs on YouTube. Type in Mike Perry's name and you will see. MVP fight, 6.6 million views. 1.2 million against Alvarez. 762,000, 2.6 million against Julian Lane. Julian Lane is literally just a let me bang bro guy. He's not really a huge name himself. Just a random clip of Mike Perry, 1.9 million views. Mike Perry put it on the map. He put it on the map. He really did. There were some crazy fights that would get millions of views, and there are fights with more views than Mike Perry's. But Perry was the reason why people were tuning in to watch him live. Those other fights that went viral, people found it on YouTube afterwards and shared it around saying, this is a war, you need to watch this. Mike Perry brought name value to begin with. And again, additionally, got extra views because every single fucking one of his fights ever have been fun. Every single BKFC fight. Violence. Who cares about trying to get a win? He's trying to fucking finish motherfuckers. Every fucking fight. Lays out a bunch of guys on the regional scene in a year and a half. Wars every single fight he has in the UFC. Even if he loses, he's going out there to get a win. And maybe that's why he lost a lot of his fights. Because he's charging forward against dangerous guys. Okay? And he makes it to the BKFC. And this is where I want to talk about Conor McGregor. As I just said, Mike Perry is BKFC. Fact. He beats Luke Rockhold, and Conor McGregor recently has been talking about firing Mike Perry from BKFC. I don't think it's going to happen. I doubt that, but still. Maybe this will lead to a fun moment at a press conference between them moving forward. Mike Perry beats Luke Rockhold, calls out Conor McGregor on the mic. Conor McGregor grabs the BKFC belt off of Lorenzo Hunt, who was the heavyweight champ at the time, and Mike Perry faces off with him in the cage. It goes fucking viral. Everywhere. Massive. And look who's grinning away in between them. Dave Feldman. The guy who runs the BKFC. The promoter of the BKFC. And this was before the McGregor deal. Mike Perry happens to win. McGregor happens to be in the crowd. Sure, there were probably some conversations beginning already. But if you don't think this sealed the fucking deal for McGregor to jump on board with BKFC, you're out of your mind. Grabbed the BKFC belt, put it over his shoulder, said he would do a bare knuckle with Mike Perry someday. Headlines go everywhere. This all but cemented the deal of Conor McGregor coming to the BKFC, even if the conversations have already begun before it. Mike Perry secured that deal, because if he lost, this wouldn't have happened. And he did win, and he took advantage of the time on the mic afterwards. Dare I mention, just after beating Luke fucking Rockhold, not that long after Luke Rockhold had a decent scrap with Paulo Costa, who's currently top 10 at middleweight. Okay? And recently had good performances against Strickland and Whitaker, even though he lost. Yeah, I shouldn't even have to fucking remind you. He beats two more guys, and so fucking what? This is what happens from Mike Perry. Conor McGregor deal, then McGregor meets up with Dave Feldman only a couple of months ago now, and officially signs with BKFC, and now BKFC is mainstream because of Mike fucking Perry. So fucking what he lost to Jake Paul, dude? I don't give a fuck. He was undersized. He had short notice about it as well. Jake was supposed to be fighting Mike Tyson. Perry stepped up on short notice. Didn't have time to bulk up. Wouldn't have been able to bulk up even if he did have enough time, because Jake Paul's just a larger man than him. And he's way more experienced in boxing. And boxing is boxing. It's not punching. Just because you can punch doesn't mean you can box. Just because you can box, it don't mean you can punch. Paulie Malignaggi, elite level boxer, taken out by the man himself, Artem Lobov. We ain't letting you forget this one, boxing audience. Quit trashing Perry. This Platinum P we're talking about, dude. People are so ready to just not admit Jake Paul's okay at boxing. He don't have to be world level, guys. Just admit he's okay. They're so quick to that they just have to trash Mike Perry to cope about it. Fucking stop. It ends today. You had Sunday. You had Monday. All of Monday today. You had Saturday night as well. The narrative changes. This is still Platinum P. Shut the fuck up. See you later. Goodbye. Not the man that lost to Jake Paul. The man who built an entire sport on the back of his own bare knuckle. See you later. Goodbye.